Welcome to Pro Practice, your guide to piano mastery. I'm Josh Wright, and today's tutorial is based on the second movement of Sonatine by Maurice Ravel. This gorgeous movement is marked Mouvement de Menuet, and it is a slow waltz-like or minuet-like texture or tempo throughout this. It's very important that we just think about tempo from the very get-go, because he does mark slower, and he marks many slow downs throughout the piece. So we don't want to go too slow, but we also don't want it to go so fast that it starts to lose some of the magic. You're going to hear a lot of variety in many different recordings, and you get to decide on what tempo you want to take. If you're going on the slower side, I'd probably fall into that category. I don't like it to go too quickly. Just make sure it doesn't lose its momentum. If you're going on the faster side, make sure that it still maintains that beauty and it doesn't feel like it's driving, because this is a very innocent movement, so simple, very childlike. Before we dive too much further into the tutorial portion, I'll go ahead and play the first bit of this, and then we will talk about many different elements in this piece. I won't play the repeat just this first time through, just this little playthrough. We're absolutely going to take the repeats, and we're going to be talking about the differences of how we can shape that differently between the two iterations of it. But let's go ahead and play through just a bit of this in case you're not familiar with it. We'll go ahead and stop there. You could take it faster. That's definitely moving a lot more. You might go a little slower than I did, but be careful, because I feel like I'm at about the slowest tempo that I can safely take. If you go much slower, it starts to plod along and it starts to sound a little vertical. So somewhere in between those two extremes. If I can just take a moment to reference an old thought, an old example that I've given in previous tutorials. One of my colleagues at the university, one time I played the first Chopin Ballade for him, and he said, you know, one thing, and I was quite young when I played it for him, maybe 17 or 18. We were doing some accompanying lessons. He's an amazing vocal coach and teacher, and he said, play me something that you're working on right now for competitions. And I played him the first Ballade, and he said, you know, something to always remember. This is the first Ballade by Frédéric Chopin. And I was playing it a bit slower, and he said, something I always think about when I play that piece is that even though that is tragic, it has to dance. And I loved that thought. It really stuck with me. Dance. So even though this is a slower dance, it doesn't have quite that not that tempo, but still have it that it still has this lilting movement to it, that it's not da dum bum ba ba bum. I've heard students do that. there's a lot more than just tempo that's wrong with that type of playing. But let's see. This feels like it's a slow dance. Okay, so those are my thoughts on the initial tempo. Let's talk a little bit about voicing. If you haven't seen any of my other videos, I mentioned this in probably just about every video. One of my favorite voicing exercises is just to play staccato and pianissimo on the bottom, and then legato and forte on the top. It's an ugly exercise, but it really helps you to figure out, okay, how can I lean more weight? And so more weight and speed in that top. That's going to be key. And then another thought that I had that I wanted to start with is think of this left hand. If you think of a buoy in the ocean, just one of those floating, bobbing objects, it goes up and down with the waves, but it always stays on top. That's how I like to feel these portamento textures in this left hand, because I don't want kind of this heaviness, but I don't want it to be too short to where it starts to really ring out. It's just very gentle. And then this very legato melody. Da, da, dum, so thinking instrumentally can really help as well. You can almost think of the beginning of the second movement of the Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto No. 1. Those little string pizzicatos, obviously those are a little bit shorter than this, but I remember accompanying, and one of my teachers said, my gosh, you actually sounded like strings there. And it was because I gave a little bit more resonance to those. It wasn't like a sharp pluck, but it also wasn't lazy. Okay, obviously we're talking about a slightly different texture, but this is kind of the same idea. All right. Just a few things with the fingering. Try your best to play legato on the melody. So I like something like 3-1, 5-2-1, 2-1-4, 5-2-1, 2-1, 5-2-1, and then I do 5-2-1 and then 5-4-2-1. If your hands aren't big enough, you can go to 5-2-1 there, and then 5-5-2-1, 5-3-1. Left hand, I'm doing 5-2, 5-2, 4-1, 3-2, 4-1, 5-2, and then you can do whatever you want, whatever's comfortable here. If you like a more open fingering, if you like a closed fingering. So open 5-3-2, 5-3-2, and then I'd go to 1-2-5 for sure. Or you can keep it closed the whole time. You could do 5-3-1, 5-2-1, 5-2-1. That's probably a little more logical, to be honest. So do whatever is comfortable there. But one thing to not do, because this is jumping around a little and we're using a lot of fives, make sure it doesn't sound vertical. We talked a little bit about that in the first movement. A couple other quick things that I wanted to say. This is in the key of D flat major. So we had the first movement. In the key of F sharp minor. So you think, well, how is D flat major related to F sharp minor? It's the enharmonic spelling of the dominant. So the dominant of F sharp minor is C sharp, and then the enharmonic of C sharp is D flat. Another thing that's fun to think about, how does this start? And how did this one start? We also see rising fifths in this. So we see these falling fourths and this play on fourths and fifths throughout the entire piece, the entire work as a whole. So I think that this is a very significant and beautiful way to start this movement, because it's taking Ti-dum, which is in the key of F sharp minor. Ti-dum. That's kind of sighing. There's some sadness to it. There's mystery to it. And this is in that kind of same middle register, a higher register. But it's optimistic. It goes up. And it has these little steps. So it's playing back and forth with the direction that it's going, but it is interesting to look at those little motives of fourths and fifths and how they're manipulated. Also in the third movement, there's another fourth rather than ti-dum. In the first movement, ta-dum. I talked quite a bit about this in the first movement tutorial, but I wanted to reiterate that as we start the second movement in case you didn't see the first movement tutorial. All right, and I covered some background in the first movement tutorial, historical background, so you can reference that if you want more information on that. Let's get into a little bit of the shape, and then we're going to keep moving on. You may have heard in the first time I played this, I didn't kill the second note. Sometimes people go and really bring that out. I kind of like it because he wrote the slower ji-dum. I like that to sigh almost upwards, which is a strange thing to say, but ji-dum, like buoyant, like it's lifting into the air, evaporating, ji-dum. And then this one I can drive forward to there. So it creates nice contrast between the first two measures. Already we're creating contrast rather than to there and to there. It's kind of ordinary if we do them the exact same way. Whereas if we have the first one sigh and diminuendo a little, you don't want to take that too far because it can sound heavy and awkward if you do that, but just a little, just very slight. And then go to there, and then apex, and then sigh down to here. This is an idea from Susan Dolmeyer, my brilliant lifelong teacher. I played this for her a month or two ago, and she said, think of this as the end, and then to there. She talks a lot about that. You've probably heard me reference those ideas from the Beethoven-Waldstein tutorials. Always a great idea because it makes your beats and your measures overlap. It's not written into a box. So rather than da-da-da-da-dum, it's there to there to there. It's much more horizontal in nature and it sings much more naturally that way. So, and then to there. All right, already I want to start talking about how things differ from the first time through these first two lines to the second time through. So the first time, I would probably, we just went to there, maybe arrive here, and then gradually come down to there. And then if you want, you can do a little crescendo diminuendo. To there, then less. The second time through, we can start soft again. I don't think, starting so boldly right after you were dry on those. Also, those are a little bit shorter than those portamento textures like we were talking about here. Obviously, those are in the pedal as well. So this is a stark difference. But I still like to think of a cello. Bum, bum. And there's a little bit of resonance in there. It's not like, that's unregulated. That, see how short that is? It's not, it's a little bit more gentle. It's not lazy, but flatter finger, pull back slightly. That helps slow down the hammer speed just a little bit. That'll help you get that texture. So we're going to start a little bit less, the same kind of softer texture to start. And then maybe less time. And then maybe we do a subito piano or pianissimo, which if we do that, maybe we can go all the way to there, rather than doing the diminuendo like we did the first time. So to recap, we'll probably play the first four bars pretty similarly. Maybe the first time we take a little more time and and then do that little idea from Susan. The second time through, maybe not so much. A little straighter. But then maybe we dip back down the second time softer, which is quite magical. Leaves us a lot of room to grow. What that does is it creates longer ideas. A lot of people ask me, like, Josh, why do you still take piano lessons? And one of the reasons is this very topic. How can I make my lines longer? So that's something I want you to think about right from the get-go. All right, moving on.